Let's go! I am rubbing my hands together so menacingly because you all know exactly who this one's about. She's a witch, she's a siren, she's the most evil cat burglar on One Piece's seas, along with being the most extraordinary navigator out there. Someone who takes absolutely no shit and is arguably the most terrifying person in canon due to her complete control over the monster trio within the Straw Hats. If there's anyone who can solo these three, it's the gorgeous witch herself. That's right, we're finally talking about the navigator of the Straw Hats, Miss Nami. Something about me? I love Nami. I really love Nami. Nami's story made me legitimately gasp in shock because I am genuinely not used to well-written women in shonen. In fact, Nami's Arlong Park arc is one of the deciding factors for many to realize if One Piece is worth their time or not, and for good reason. One Piece is 100% character focused and driven, with the world building and lore following right behind it. After all, this world has been built through Roger's existence, as he's the first thing we're told about. This single character has been set as the turning point of this world, putting everything in motion, from the world government's iron fist hold of justice to Luffy's dream of becoming the next pirate king. Character is crucial for One Piece to stay loyal and true to its story, and that's why Arlong Park is so stunning and so brilliant in its execution. Admittedly, this series does have a slow start, with Zoro and Usopp's recruitment stories being very short. I always considered Sanji's recruitment story pretty simple yet exceptional, something that budded and blossomed with the addition of Whole Cake Island years later. But Nami's recruitment, going from her very early introduction to her eventual complications a full 2 crew members later, is what cements her as a fantastic character, and solidifies One Piece as the early masterpiece people knew it would become. But before I dig deep into Nami and start picking her brain apart in terms of how she operates and functions as a person, it's sponsor time. While we cannot all be pirates in our current day and age, we can still be pirates online, and we can do that safely with Atlas VPN. If you're not a tech nerd like me and have no idea what a VPN is, a VPN makes it so all your internet searches, browsing, and history is completely protected. It's sure to hide your IP address, and it keeps you safe from spying, especially from the pesky FBI agent in your computer who's watching you look up Zoro's big fat boobies as we speak. But Atlas VPN isn't just a VPN, it also protects you from pop-up ads and malicious malware. It can also give you access to any country's version of Netflix or Disney+. I mentioned Disney+ specifically because did you guys know that the entirety of Bleach is on Australian Disney+? And with Atlas, you, yes, you, can take advantage of Atlas's huge discount. You can get a 3-year subscription from $1.83 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Even better than that, if you use my link in the description below, you get an 82% discount for premium subscription. Snatch that deal while it's hot, and thank you so much Atlas VPN for sponsoring this video. I won't let you down. Alright, let's get back to the fabulous navigator of the Straw Hats. Although, before I continue on, we must get one thing straight. Nami is eye candy. There's no doubt that through the years her design has become more male gazy, and I'm not here to dispute nor defend that. There's nothing inherently wrong with this, even if her design can get a bit too crazy sometimes, especially from Toei. My goodness, Miss Nami, put those away! Or don't, it's your choice. I mean, I'm not gonna complain about it. But here's the catch, and here's the thing that makes me particularly love Nami. Just like Boa, her beauty intertwines with her abilities, and she uses it. Nami has swindled men time and time again by bewitching them, even showing off her body as a way to get the men of her crew in debt to her. Sanji is, of course, the biggest example of this, but he's a bit of an outlier since, well, he likes to be used. These two have a symbiotic relationship where Nami loves being worshipped and using people, and Sanji loves to worship Nami and be used by her. We even see in Alabasta that Sanji knows the exact clothes and perfumes Nami loves to wear, as she praises him for what he's found in the Alabasta markets. It's not the healthiest relationship, admittedly, but under all of this, they do care about each other. And I know I talk about Sanji a lot in all of these videos, but with Nami being one of the main cast in Whole Cake Island when saving Sanji, and with Nami and Sanji always being around each other in some way, it's difficult to not talk about one without the other. That aside, what I'm getting at here, and what I'm trying to say in regards to Nami's looks and personality, is that she knows her strengths. She doesn't seem to care that she's beautiful, apart from the fact that she can manipulate men with it into getting her whatever she wants, which is something we've seen with a lot of female characters throughout different medias. The most known one coming to mind being Catwoman, or at least from the little I know of Catwoman, she tends to use her looks in similar ways. And as similar as this is to Boa, Nami's still very much separated from her for multiple reasons. And I won't get into that now, as I can save Boa for another time. But Nami is downright interesting because she embodies what pirates are more historically known to be, which are thieving, evil criminals who take what they can get. Don't get me wrong, Nami has morals, they just tend to favor herself more than others. But one of the main reasons I love Nami so much, and something I commend Oda for with how he's written her, is that Nami is evil. She's not Doflamingo evil, and this word may be a bit heavy in regards to what we see in One Piece, but she is definitely morally grey. If you hear a lot of people, especially men, talk about Nami, what you'll hear is that she's mean. Nami is aggressive, cunning, and most of the time, downright wicked. She even yells at and slaps her own crew around, and is more than happy finding ways to manipulate people to do her bidding. So why do I like her so much? Why do we like her so much if her behavior can honestly just be awful sometimes? As always, it's because it correlates perfectly to her story and past trauma. It makes sense. And just like how Sanji can be rotten towards his male crewmates, or how Zoro can act stone cold on the surface at times, deep down Nami cares very much about her crew. Nami is not the mushy waifu bait you'd expect her to be. She's not someone that will hold your hand unless it were to charm you out of your wallet. But she's given the same demeanor and stubbornness the men are allowed to have. She can go toe to toe and possibly more with Zoro in terms of both drinking and stubbornness. These two extremely similar in how they bury their emotions deep down to act collected on the surface. This is possibly why Zoro was the one to suss her out in Arlong Park, calling her bluff and putting his life in her hands when jumping into the water. The tender center yet hardened shell is something they share due to the lives they've lived. And the relationship Zoro and Nami have is a very underappreciated one in my opinion. Nami overall acts the way I feel a thief and pirate would act in terms of being a woman on a pirate ship. On the surface, she has this feminine charm in her fashion and looks, but her personality and heart is as loud, crazy, and rowdy as the boys. And even though I know Oda has said questionable things, I take it all with a grain of salt, since you don't accidentally write a character like Nami. And I will defend Nami in being a fantastic character, because he isn't afraid to make her mean. He isn't afraid to make her morally grey or evil. And whenever someone calls her a bitch, I say, good. I hope she stays one, because her icy heart has been well earned and well kept considering what she's been through. I'm already going on and on about Nami here, but with everything I'm saying, I'm sure a lot of you are questioning why making Nami aggressive makes her a good character. Because in all honesty, she cannot hold up to the men in terms of strength. She certainly doesn't have the brawn to match the beauty, but I'm sure you all know me enough by now to know I'm not particularly interested in the fights. And with that I can say, making a woman strong does not automatically make them a good female character. I know a lot of guys see a girl who can punch someone to high heavens and wonder why they're not included in the list of top 10 best women to be written ever. In fact, I actually have seen this opinion a lot with Nami, that because she's not particularly powerful, Oda has purposefully made her bad, which is so crazy to me, because Nami isn't a fighter. but she's still one of the most important members on the crew. She's a navigator, the best one in the world at that, and there's no doubt the Straw Hats would have died 10 times over had she not been with them. Her battles are not with the big bads, her battles are with the weather and the seas. That's where she excels, and that's where she truly shines. Early on, we're shown just how extraordinary she is, as Vivi is shocked by how she uses her entire body to navigate the oceans.
すごい。グランドラインのサイクロンは前兆のない風だと言われているのに、この人はもともと理論だけで天候を予測してるんじゃないんだ。まるで体で天候を感じ取ってるみたい。こんな航海士見たことない。
But I still haven't answered my own question here, with that question being, why is she a good character by being aggressive? You can have an aggressive woman in any show and they can seem extremely two-dimensional or even stereotypical in how they act. So what's the difference with Nami? It's simple, and I already said it before. It's because it makes sense. My biggest question with any character I see in One Piece, and something I encourage everyone to think when they watch anything, is why does this character act the way they do? The reason Nami's story was so fantastic, giving many the foresight of how amazing a series One Piece would grow to be, is because Nami was the first character to have an extremely solid arc with layers of tragic depth and emotional intelligence. But the biggest thing, everything, emotionally, clicked into place, and Oda didn't go back on it with how he'd written Nami. What do I mean by that last part? Well, I think it's about time we actually get into Nami's story to truly understand her. Like many members of the Straw Hats, Nami was born into misfortune. She was abandoned in the middle of a war in the East Blue, possibly because her parents died, where her adopted sister, Nojiko, had found her. But it's here she encounters arguably the most important person in her life, and a woman who shaped her entire being with the generosity of her soul. An ex-marine and her mother, Nami is found and adopted by Bellemere. In the same way the cornerstone of Zoro's character is Kuina, or how the cornerstone of Law's character is both Doffy and Corazon, or how Sanji's cornerstone is Zeph, the base of Nami's entire character comes from Bellemere and her relationship to her. From the get-go, Bellemere was someone who refused help, having the stubbornness to raise two girls on her own with very limited income. It could be out of stupidity, but it was mainly out of love. The belief that Nami and Nojiko were her daughters, something she cherished and clung to. Nothing was more important to her than family, to the point she left the Marines to raise her two little girls. Bellemere's existence, in fact, brings up an aspect of social commentary with One Piece's unfair politics in itself. Even though this woman gave a fair chunk of her life to the Marines, upholding their idea of justice and fighting multiple wars for them, she found no safety net nor support from the very establishment she fought for. It could be due to her stubbornness, but it's certainly a subtle nod at how one can give years of their life to a system that will do nothing back for them, unless they stay in said system. A system that we know to be corrupted, as shown years later in Arlong Park. Anyways, social commentary aside, one of the most important points here was the lack of money Nami had while growing up. Put simply, she was living in poverty, having to wear reused clothes from Nojiko, and only rarely being able to have a nice dinner if Bellemere was able to save the money for it. Usually, and on a very shallow level, this would be enough. That because Nami was raised in a poor household, she became obsessed with money and desired to be rich. But oh no, Nami is not that shallow, and Oda made sure there was a lot more to Nami's greed of riches than just being poor. Here's something I ask you. Do you find Nami's love of money to be selfish? Do you find her materialistic with how she always has berry signs in her eyes upon discovering she can get richer? If your answer to that is yes, and you find her money obsession to be a result of greed, I implore you to look deeper. Because I actually find her desire for money to be materialistic on the surface, but extremely selfless at its core. Do you remember in my Chopper video when I said the reason I enjoy One Piece's characters is because they aren't just traumatized for the sake of being traumatized? That we are shown the long-lasting effects of what such horrible events can do to a person. Nami is a prime example of this, and her past is why she is how she is. Because in her little coastal village with her poor mother, she watched as Bellemere prioritized her and her sister's lives over her own. She watched as Bellemere would rather die declaring Nami and Nojiko as her daughters, than live pretending they weren't family due to having no blood ties. In front of Arlong, one of the most fearsome pirates in the East, Bellemere proudly called herself the mother of these two girls, and her final words with a gun to her head showed her extreme devotion to Nami and Nojiko.
Nojiko! Nami! 大好き
Nami witnessing this horrific scene as a child would definitely be enough to make her hate pirates, and it's no wonder why she was so avidly against joining Luffy and his crew from the beginning. But why did Arlong shoot Bellemere here? As most of us know, it's due to Bellemere being unable to pay the living tax that Arlong enforced. So Bellemere gave up her life to keep her daughters alive, and she was shot dead due to being unable to provide the money needed for all three of them as a family. And this entire scene Nami was forced to witness, from Bellemere's position of poverty to Arlong's power, is where the obsession of money came into play. This little girl realized money is power, but it's not power for herself, it's power to keep those she cares about alive. Because what does she do after this? At 10 years old, she makes a deal with Arlong involving money, asking if she can buy the island from him if she manages to make enough. And this promise is what keeps her going, is why she fights for those she cares about with an iron heart. And it's evident at this point that money isn't just an obsession for her, it's a safety net. Does Nami care for materialistic things? Does she like to buy new clothes and shiny jewelry? Yes, because that's an outcome of being too poor to afford new things. But more than that, money is a comfort for her. It's true she may use it to tease Zoro by keeping him in debt, or may demand it when transporting Vivi to Alabasta, but it's ultimately an excuse she uses for care. In the end, Nami doesn't truly enforce Zoro's debt, just uses it to keep him in line from time to time. But we can see Nami isn't truly selfish with the promise of money. And a huge example of this is her relationship with Vivi. At first, Nami was far more interested in the reward of keeping a princess safe, rather than caring for Vivi as a person and friend. But from the get-go, with how Nami comforts her, we can see she cares very deeply about Vivi, probably due to seeing a lot of herself in her. While not being a princess, Nami promised herself to someone else to save her island, risking her life to keep those she loved safe at a young age. Vivi had done the exact same thing, joining Baroque Works as a child while watching those she loved die in an attempt to keep her country safe and free from corrupt pirates. A connection was quickly formed between these two, one where Nami very nearly died from illness to get Vivi to Alabasta. In fact, throughout their time together, Nami constantly uses the reward she'll get as an excuse to keep Vivi safe. But somehow, I don't think Nami would hide the news of Alabasta's war from Vivi if it were just for the reward. Nami had done everything in her power to keep Vivi calm and comfortable while with the Straw Hats, and her love for Vivi shines through when giving her all against Miss Doublefinger.
こんなもの痛くも痒くもないわ。あんたにあの子の痛みがわかる。それに比べたら足の1本や2本や3本手のカッパ。
By the end of the Alabasta arc, Sanji asks Nami if she's okay, stating that he knew how close the two girls were, and understanding that Nami may be hurting from leaving Vivi behind. But just like she'd been doing the whole time, she uses money as a cover-up for what she's really feeling.
私諦めるビビのためだもんね。10億ベリー。うわ、嘘っこだ落ちた。ナミ、てめえ紛らわしい真似してんじゃねえぞ。 何騒いでんのあんたたち。
I'm just saying, it is clearly an excuse to bury her true emotions. But it's not just Vivi. In the same way Sanji's kindness is revealed when someone is truly in need of compassion, Nami's care is shown with her generosity. Money means a great deal to her, so when she shares it, you know it's due to how much she treasures a person. In Thriller Bark, upon finding out Lola was the zombie she's bonded with, Nami offers her a share, telling Lola she can take as much treasure as she wants. To me, the most outstanding one is with Kami, mainly because this situation was extremely similar to Bellamère's, her life being worth the money she had. Nami may be strict on her money, yes, but the second someone needs it, especially someone she cares for, she's willing to spend it all. Nami was prepared to spend every cent to get Kami back, to make sure she didn't become a slave to someone who would outright use, abuse, and take her life. Because of the Celestial Dragons, this didn't come to pass. But this entire scene proves my point, that Nami sees money as a safety net more than anything, and she's connected protection of life with money due to the trauma she's been through. So her obsession is not greed, and it never has been. Her money obsession has always been protection, and it's these connections that boost character writing and personality in a way only One Piece can do so thoroughly. From here, another question is raised. Why is Nami so distant and aggressive, especially at the beginning? Well, because she had no choice but to be cold-hearted. In the same way Robin became closed off and distant emotionally due to the life she was forced to live, Nami was in a similar situation. She wasn't allowed to trust anyone, nor could anyone fully trust her. From the age of 10, Nami had to trick, swindle, and fight multiple people out of their money in hopes of saving her village, never wanting anyone to be shot in cold blood like her mother ever again. Not only this, but her life belonged to Arlong, the tattoo on her shoulder a painful reminder of this fact. When a girl as young as Nami gives her life to someone she hates, and puts the lives of others on her shoulders without wanting help, of course they're going to grow into someone hostile and cold. Her only option was to bar her heart and emotions and be tough. Otherwise, she risks falling apart and letting down those she's worked so hard to protect. Nami was never given the comfort of trust, for herself or for those around her. That is, until meeting Luffy. There's a single major scene in Arlong Park that has become iconic, and for good reason. This scene being Nami finally asking for Luffy's help. But what's so great about this scene? Is this just a damsel in distress asking for the help of a big strong man? No, God no, and it never has been, because this single scene is what reveals to us Nami's true heart and true character. What makes this iconic moment so good is everything building up to it. Nami meeting Luffy, her moments with the Straw Hats, her betrayal upon stealing the Merry, her reveal of being with Arlong, her anger at Luffy's refusal to leave, the unveiling of why she's really doing this. What we're seeing is every single step leading up to the unraveling of Nami's being, and her anger at Luffy in this time is not anger per se, but more so confusion. She doesn't understand why Luffy still trusts, doesn't get why Luffy wants her as part of his crew even though she betrayed them. But this is another showing of why Luffy is a fantastic captain. Nami puts on a hard front, but luckily for her, Luffy is, and say it with me everyone, a fantastic people person. Luffy can read those around him like no other, and at this point, he's been with her long enough to know she isn't the bad person she pretends to be. So, respecting Nami's need to execute everything on her own, he waits. Because at this point, Nami is so close to freedom. She's been trapped by Arlong for just under a decade, being abused and used by him for nearly half her life. But she's about to persevere. She's finally made enough money to buy the island, just needing a small amount until the deal is set in stone. That is, until the corrupted system I was previously talking about comes back around, and a marine who bargained with Arlong shatters Nami's hopes of freedom. With Arlong's power, and with no mercy from the Marines, Nami's dreams are ripped from right under her. But even so, she keeps her brave face. She decides she can just start again, believing it easy to re-steal the amount she'd been working on for years, until the village decides against it. They placed all their bets on Nami, not wanting her sacrifice to be in vain, but she'd ultimately failed, so they marched to Arlong Park, prepared to die for their freedom. And those years of torment Nami went through begin to weigh on her. Throughout her hardships, Nami placed her trust on one thing, and that was for Arlong to keep his word. From there, she refused to trust anything or anyone else. The thought of Arlong's word is what anchored her. It's what kept her going as the witch she was made out to be. But this wasn't substantial anymore. You could argue she was stupid for it, as pirates are known to lie and cheat. But these were the dreams of a little girl. These were Nami's dreams that she endlessly suffered for. And as Nami stands there, something heartbreaking happens. She realized that suffering was for nothing. She breaks down in a fit of despair. The man she hates tattooed on her arm as a reminder of how stupid she turned out to be, giving us the grim imagery of Nami stabbing herself in desperation to get this wicked thing off her body, until Luffy shows up, stopping her from her self-mutilation, completely silent as Nami sobs in front of him. What we're seeing here is Nami left with nothing else. We're seeing someone who was swindled out of sacrificing herself for a life of hell, and she was left with no one and nothing. The only people left were Luffy and the Straw Hats, people she hardly knew, but still followed her through it all. After all these years of having to act tough and put on an iron will, of refusing help due to wanting to keep everyone safe, that little girl we once saw comes back through overflowing tears. The reason this scene is so iconic and the reason it brings you to tears is because, for the first time, it's Nami being vulnerable. To cry, to ask for help, to trust. Those are extremely personal things to reveal to someone. Since Bellemere had been shot, Nami had never been vulnerable again. But in front of Luffy, she can no longer keep up the facade. It's this single moment that started a chain reaction of how Luffy helps his crew. It's extremely reminiscent of Robin's iconic Water 7 scene, and Sanji's breakdown during Whole Cake Island. They're exposing themselves wholly and truly to Luffy, and Nami was one of the first to truly experience this. For Nami, to trust is terrifying, but as a final grasp for hope, she put everything on Luffy. And what does Luffy respond with in regards to this? Of course, because when someone you love asks for help, what else to say other than of course? This shout of determination may as well have been a warm hug for Nami. And after Luffy gives her his hat, his treasure, to keep safe, he marches to Arlong with the rest of his crew. There's plenty of fantastic moments in the Luffy and Arlong fight regarding Nami, but my favorite is Luffy's rage upon discovering the room full of Nami's maps. We see some paper splattered in blood, others that seem to be years old, and Arlong explains to us this was the room he'd locked Nami in to force maps out of her. To put simply, this was a room of abuse, and those maps weren't Nami's creations. Those were her nightmares. It speaks a lot on Luffy's character that he didn't once consider how those maps could be useful to him, but the only instinct he had was to destroy them and the room in a fit of rage. This cemented Nami's heart in being a Straw Hat, and it cemented Luffy's undying devotion once declaring Nami as his navigator, his word absolute, with Nami only able to nod, her nightmare finally over thanks to her captain. If we skip ahead years and arcs later to Wano, it's no wonder why she'd rather die than announce anyone else as the future Pirate King. Her moment with Ulti, another favorite of mine in terms of Nami moments. Nami showing and voicing her true emotions like this is a very healthy, very exceptional growth of character. She's gone from a girl who'd cry behind the backs of others to keep a strong face, to someone who'll stand up for Luffy with snot dripping down her nose. It's something I've come to love and appreciate about Nami's development. Now, in saying that, there's something I still haven't quite touched on yet, and that's how Oda didn't go back on it with how he'd written Nami. I think the best example of what I'm talking about here is Whole Cake Island. And you guessed it, her relationship with Sanji. Specifically, the slap. And what a slap it was. A win for feminism, if I'm to be honest. What I mean with this is, even though Nami's grown emotionally to be more open, she's still Nami. Her attitude still isn't the greatest. She's still not morally perfect. And she can still be downright dirty sometimes. But more than that, she still finds it hard to be vulnerable. She still finds it hard to trust. We see it with things like Punk Hazard. Even though her heart went out to those kids, she absolutely refused to allow Smoker to take them in his care. She'd only allow it if she could talk to Tashigi, specifically because she has a soft spot for women Marines. I wonder who caused that. Freud is having a field day with this one. In fact, Nami tends to have a soft spot for women in general. There could be multiple reasons for this, and I could say one of them, but I'll let the Khalifa scene speak for itself.
素敵でしょ。あ、色っぽい。こんな秘書がいたら正直嬉しいっておっさんか私は。
Sorry, getting back on track. Why is the Sanji slap scene so significant? The Sanji slap scene so significant. Why is the Sanji slap scene so significant? Because of what Nami says to him afterwards.
ちょっと、サンジ。さよなら。ごめんね。余計なことして。
She says goodbye, but not only that, she cries. What's important to note is, unlike Luffy, Nami isn't a people person. She's good at swindling them and tricking them, but to read them emotionally is a Luffy thing exclusively. But the main thing here is that Nami felt betrayed. Nami put her heart out to Sanji. She felt for him, felt pain and felt regret for letting him go. It certainly doesn't help that Sanji's final smile before vanishing looks eerily similar to Bellamère's. I know that's a stretch, but what isn't a stretch is Nami didn't want to lose anyone she loved again. Sanji was part of her crew and someone she cherished. Of course she cared about him, to the point she cried for him and chased after him. Just like Luffy, she was prepared to do anything to get him back. So imagine crying tears for someone you care for. Imagine worrying endlessly over the life of your family, just to see them backstab you and hurt the captain you've both pledged your lives and dreams to. Nami's reaction was understandable, and Sanji knew full well there was all possibility she'd never forgive him for it. Because Nami's trust is fragile, it makes her feel vulnerable, and Sanji completely shattered it. Luckily for him, she eventually understood his situation, and it feels like the entire Whole Cake Island crew had become closer due to these events. I have been talking about Nami for so long now, and I really didn't think this would happen, but to wrap this up, all in all, Nami has always felt like Nami. Nami has always been a wicked witch of a character, a woman with a Cheshire cat grin because she loves picking pockets of unsuspecting men. And I don't think that's ever changed. She's never been placid nor meek since being introduced, and her confidence is so high it reaches the heavens themselves. But that's what I like about her. She is not strong in a traditional sense, but she is certainly no pushover. I understand many people have issues with Nami's body and the way it's drawn, but I've always thought it a shame that non-fans can't put it aside for a second to actually look at her character. In all honesty, she's fantastic, and I fully appreciate her themes of trickery and trust to be the character she currently is. Nami was a welcome surprise when first watching One Piece. Her core has never changed. And honestly, she's one of the main reasons I can stick to One Piece. So she's stolen not only my wallet, but my heart as well. And with that, thanks for watching. Oh my god, there's so much to talk about with Nami. I barely even got into Vivi there. I know a lot of you are happy with longer videos, but editing them would actually kill me, so I'm so sorry if this didn't touch on as much as you wanted it to. If there's anything you love about Nami that I didn't mention, let me know. I love reading the comments because there's so many unique perspectives of characters that I tend to miss. And I feel like Nami's a goldmine of interpretation. Also, thank you so much for over 220k subscribers. I haven't prepared anything for it because I was away, and I have no idea what to do for it, but I'd like to say thank you nonetheless. Just a quick reminder that I do have a Patreon, and if you would like to support me there, I'd really appreciate it. However, I know not everyone can support me in that way, and watching and sharing these videos does more than you can imagine for me. If there's anything you'd like to see me cover, One Piece or otherwise, please let me know, and I'll see you in whatever I make next. See ya!